Welcome to Season 6 of Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real. Introducing corporate leaders who have taken the leap to business owners, introducing their great idea in our guest blog, found on shareyourstories.online. Our guest joins us from Zorra, Ontario. Heather Brekelmans is the founder of Two Steps Ahead, a one-stop marketing company that connects customers with clients through storytelling. She uses the tagline, Get Real, which introduces a business strategy with purpose. Let's find out how Heather is bridging the gap between growth and opportunity for sustained success. It's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Heather. How you doing?
Mostly wonderful. It's gorgeous today.
It certainly is. Why don't we start by telling us a little bit about this amazing tagline that you have that says, Get Real. There's got to be a story behind that tagline. So share with our viewing and listening audience how you came up with it.
Absolutely. I can't take full credit at all, actually. So I have a wonderful core executive team, and we were having just a rant moment about a client that was just challenging. And she literally started putting notes on sticky notes and sticking them to her forehead because we were in a virtual meeting. And so by the end, she landed on the Get Real tagline, because people just need to get real. Like, don't say things that make no sense. Don't try things that they just need to get real with it. I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of perfect. Let's write that down. Because a lot of the frustration we have with some of our clients is when they have wonderful ideas and or a lack of depth maybe into what's possible.
Sure.
And they just need a reality check.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, for one-stop shop for a marketing company is very broad. So give us a real quick overview of the various different components that you offer as a marketing firm, because I find that lots of people use marketing firm as the umbrella, but then they're all offering different services under that umbrella. So what do you offer?
Oh, wonderful. So we do a predominant focus on the strategy behind anything you're working on. Hence why we kind of labeled it one stop, because depending what people are trying to create really depends how many things it touches. So when we're looking at, we label them as campaigns, but that's very much market speak, right? So when they're just trying to promote an event, there are 5-6 different channels that you touch. And the channel can be digital media, can be your website, it can be a piece of print material that you're taking out to the community. And it's, in our very wonderful opinion, the more succinct and consistent that message is across all platforms, that is how things are more effective. So we label it one stop in that you're looking at the whole picture, and we'll create the pieces that go together. And if it's outside the scope of our particular expertise, we intentionally have referred partners for that kind of information, right? So there's mostly in the form of creating creative pieces. We try to avoid delving too deep into the creation of major platforms.
Sure. And what about things like marketing products, like promotional products, things that you put your logo on? Because when I visited your website, I noticed that you also sort of brought that into the fold, I suspect, as part of the campaign rollout.
Absolutely. We still have a little bit more fun around finding unique pieces of product, right? So we had an opportunity to create something for a golf tournament, and wanted to make, like, everybody gets A, B, and C from regular golf tournaments. We're like, we don't want a divot picker, we don't want a tee, we don't want another golf towel. We're like, what can we do that's different? And we chose a ball marker, which is still a little consistent, and it was poignant in that you're marking your spot, which is really what we want them to think about, is that they're intentionally putting a placeholder in, and that's usually where we end up being.
So how did you come about, we've all crossed the bridge from having a job and working a 9-to-5 and taking the leap and being an entrepreneur and a business owner. How did you make that transition from one to the other? Like, were you in a marketing role in your previous life, we'll call it?
Yeah, I had a mix. So I'd done a lot of fund development, donor relations, and member or membership management. So very often dealing with that kind of cultivation in both of my previous roles to this one. And it just sort of blended that I had sort of dabbled in marketing as part of my other role, and then moved straight into marketing for other companies. That was so much more fun than marketing for one, just because it gave much more variety.
Sure,
And then you're not restricted by maybe what one company is willing to try, because sometimes there's not the right place, space, or funding, right? So
sure. Yeah, for sure.
it also is particularly timely in that we have four tiny humans, all of whom require lots of care and attention. So I needed something that when they were sick, back to back to back to back to back, I wasn't trying to live up to a boss's expectations, um,
Sure.
but also cultivate a workplace where that's an acceptable way of showing up, because
Right.
it does not exist for the majority of working females that
Mhm.
that's an acceptable way of showing up.
That's a really interesting point because, whether you have, as you say, a number of small humans that, as they grow and evolve as people require your undivided attention, or whether you're at the opposite end of the spectrum and you have family members who you're supporting in terms of, the various day-to-day things that we do in life. Do you find that entrepreneurship, I mean, it has its challenges too. I mean, nothing's perfect, but do you find that it meets the need of being, we talk about the sandwich generation. So whether it's you and I as individuals or whether it's the clients that we're trying to serve, do you find that there seems to be a happy medium and that entrepreneurship gives you that leeway or flexibility?
It definitely gives me that flexibility. Since I haven't considered going back to not being an entrepreneur, I am also rather confident it doesn't exist in the corporate world.
Sure. Yeah.
And at least not to the extent that when my children randomly have a request for me to attend school or my parents have an appointment, that I can just reschedule myself and walk out the door.
Sure.
And that has been big for me. It's also afforded our team the same uh,
Flexibility.
needed flexibility for
Yeah.
sure.
Now, you mentioned we talked about going from the corporate environment and into an entrepreneurial environment. And we all take skills and experience from, one side of the fence to the other. Is there a skill that you feel that you could share with our viewing and listening audience that maybe was a bit of a surprise for you that you use more often in entrepreneurship than you ever thought you would?
Ooh, it's a very good question. So I will try to name the skill. I'm having trouble putting it into a proper frame, but I also discovered that there were things that are not common or normal for other people that I just expected were. This is common
Right.
sense. This is how everybody views things, and discovering that that is very not true. So, one of the particular skills that I am grateful to possess is the ability to create a mind map, for lack of a better, it's a good visual, very quickly just from listening to conversations, whether it's our team or a client. There's like a little mini slide deck that forms in my brain, and all of the
That's
pins get
cool.
plugged in, and then I can connect the dots, and I'm listening, and then okay, let's pull that together. And this is what you said, and this is a really interesting way to bring it together. So I don't exactly know whether we call that strategy or whether we call that creativity. It's an interesting visual hack that I'm grateful to possess.
Yeah, that's really very cool because especially in the marketing business, right? Like you're getting, especially when I used to call it the brain dump. When the client does the brain dump of all the things that they want to do in terms of, this is what I'm hoping to achieve in the next 12 months. And
Yeah.
so they're just kind of throwing everything out there to be able to visualize some of the components and pick out the key elements. It would be a really amazing skill because and I'm sure you use that in real life too. I mean, if you have four humans, they're all going in four different directions. So I'm sure it's something that translates both your professional and personal life, right? To be able to kind of pull things together and make them happen. Some people might call it, as you say, creative. Lots come to mind: creativity, multitasking, flexibility, vision. So yeah, that is really a very unique skill that I would say that, being it crosses both sides of the bridge. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you. I'm grateful. It's a lot of fun to get really, especially when we do brainstorming.
Sure.
So much fun to see what you can come out of it. My whiteboard gets a lot of regular use.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Now, our viewing and listening audience is always asking me the question or in the DMs that come up after we share an interview. What was the sort of tipping point? When was the time and place that you sort of were sitting in that corporate job and you said, okay, this isn't going to work anymore. I really do need to give it a whirl into entrepreneurship. I'm going to cross that bridge. Is there a light bulb moment, or is there one particular time, or is it an accumulation of a lot of events that kind of moved you in that direction?
Certainly an accumulation. And part of it is like when I finally actually left the job, I also took like a very long transition period just to set up the people taking my responsibilities really, really well. Like I think a 2 month transition period for them. In both of the roles I left, actually. And in each of those sort of accumulating instances, it would be, oh, like we're not doing this the right way. It's not effective. And I can't convince anybody, to try it a different way. Sometimes it would come down to process, lack thereof. Sometimes it was system. Other times it was budget, right? I would be met with
Mm-hmm.
that, that'd be great, but we can't do that. I'm like,
Right.
okay, well, that's unfortunate. Sometimes it came down to culture, and that's very true of a lot of places, unfortunately. It's not the reason that I chose to leave, but it is certainly something I've been extremely intentional about how we create, um, regardless of what our client's culture is like.
Mm-hmm. Your own
Mine,
culture.
yeah,
Yeah.
mine is a protected little bubble of, in my opinion, how it should be.
Right. Right. What's interesting when we're in these roles, leadership roles, and your leadership role changes tremendously when you're a leader in an organization and then you're a leader in your own company. Because we're all wearing multiple hats and we have to do so many things at one time. Is there a particular area that you would give to as advice to our viewing and listening audience and say, look, if you've come from a corporate role, and this is one of the things that I found challenging in my first few years of entrepreneurship. Some people say, oh, it's the bookkeeping. Within very short order, I hired a bookkeeper. Or someone else says, oh, it's a VA. Like I really needed a VA to help to organize my time and make sure that scheduling and things like that were happening, in the timely manner. Other people have even quite honestly said, oh, I had to find somebody for lead generation because, we have these great ideas and here we are. We don't really have a business until you sell something. So I needed someone to help me with lead gen. So what was the role or the first individual that you found that you brought into the fold, having been a solopreneur, and then you start to add members of the team? What was the first role that you added to your team?
Um, I believe the first role I added was creative director. So
Oh, cool.
you find that the piece that took the most amount of time, which is being creative, also means that that is your biggest limitation, right? So I need to be more creative. I need to be able to create more pieces. In our case, our product is the tangible creation, of that graphic, and I can only create so much in a day, and then you can very quickly run dry. So that was one of that. That is my longest standing employee is our creative director. And right up on her heels, is the ninja of all things administrative, from project
Ah,
management to bookkeeping. I certainly held onto a lot of the financial, and still do, responsibility, partially because it makes it a whole lot easier for me to speak articulately about my business if I know where that's at.
sure.
Um, I certainly have my own money stories, so I took my hands very quickly out of the invoicing responsibility as well, because it's really easy as an entrepreneur to get into a self-worth and a pay spiral
Right.
if you don't feel like it's your worth
Right.
charging what you are.
Right.
Everybody's story is different. Lead gen was not, one of those things that we needed to hire for. I have gratefully been, wonderfully busy. to the point where right now we're going to grow again, which is fantastic. But
Yeah. Well,
that
and those
also brings
challenges, right?
brings its own
Yeah.
challenges. The one thing I wish I had started sooner when it was quieter was documenting a process. So now we're trying to onboard and train, and it's not written down, it's in your head.
Right.
Then you have to
Right.
remember how to write it down, or how did I do that again? And
Right.
that's it's certainly worth doing that from the beginning, even if the process evolves.
You know what? That's probably one of the biggest takeaways that I think our viewing and listening audience will be able to get from our discussion today, because, you know, we wear multiple hats. We're fueling the energy and the fire in our business in so many different places. And you're absolutely right, though. When you're in that growth spurt, the process is the most difficult thing to sit and write, because we automatically do so many of those things on autopilot. We don't even think about it. And I'm sure your creative director is probably the same. You know, she's got a process, she or he has a process that they use to get themselves in the place where they can be creative. Now, that's maybe not a process that you could write about, but certainly the process of getting the information to the team.
Yep. Yeah, we
Right.
created a creative brief on purpose so that when the creative director wants to make something, all of her questions are answered ahead of time. And that was
That's
one of
great.
those, like, it's a process step, but
Right.
it's invaluable to her being able to do her job well.
And, you know, we all, heaven forbid, have to take time off work. So, you know, whether it's a vacation or whether it's, you know, we just need time to spend with family. I mean, that was, you mentioned flexibility and freedom. That was top of mind when you started your company. So having a process for someone that may be for a short period of time filling the role could be really very confident building, right?
It's the easiest way for me to go away for a week, and I absolutely hide off grid for a week a year. And they need to know what I would do in an instance. We also play
Right.
the game that if anything happened to any one of us, we don't want everybody else not sure how to pick up those pieces.
Sure.
So
Yeah, very
it's
important.
a little bit of preservation, but also in that, like, in how we deliver to our clients, we don't want, sorry, so and so's out, we don't know how to do this. That's
Right.
not an
Right.
acceptable answer either.
No, exactly. Now, in terms of that client attitude, because of course, you know, you're dealing with people who are also running their own businesses, and, you know, whether that's big, small, or in between. Have you found that there's been a shift, an attitude shift, or have you found in the last 12 months there's been something that has been reoccurring that you didn't expect, or something that's maybe reoccurring that you hadn't anticipated?
There's a lot of reoccurring. So the majority of our corporate clients, ones that are larger bodies, meaning they're not solopreneurs or 1 to 2 employees, right?
Right.
The attrition and or turnover and or, promotion from within, has left a lot of moving gaps. So we'll find either we have green, brand new employees on the client side of the fence,
Right.
or nobody there and they can't fill the bucket at all. Yep.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
and it's left a lot of people in different spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Those certain jobs in particular, I mean, trades for sure, but some of the other senior sales or marketing roles are in just as high a demand as a trade for employers right now. Trade certainly is more functionally important, but the
Mm-hmm.
one right behind it is how they then turn around and sell that product. So those are big gaps right now.
You know what's really interesting is that, you know, we've talked about things, challenges of being female business owners, and, you know, sometimes we need to take time away from work to deal with certain issues. But I am finding that there's difficulty in filling roles with people who maybe are more mature or senior staff members who have had to take a gap. You know, well, you know, we used to do that. There was the take the gap year after, you know, college or university, you were going to take some time away. Well, as we age, we find that people need to do that for different reasons. So the gap year has a different definition. But when they're ready to transition back into the corporate environment, as an example, I'm not finding or hearing that there's a lot of adaptability on the part of the hiring folks or HR to take someone who has a significant amount of experience who may took 12 months off or 18 months off, and now they're ready to dive back in. Is there, being that you work with a lot of clients who are finding that there's these very large corporate roles that need to be filled, would you have any advice for anyone who's sitting listening to us and going, yeah, and I've got this, everyone keeps telling me this amazing resume, but I've sent out 200 of them and nobody's even, I haven't gotten a response. So is there something that maybe you've seen or heard from the folks that you're working with that you can maybe flip the dial and say, well, yeah, the resume is kind of passé. You need to look at this.
That's very interesting. So for those who, LinkedIn is such a, oh boy, I'm going to use my words wisely here. Such an invaluable networking tool.
Right.
And a resume has become and always been a staple.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody can write on a resume what they've done and it not be a true to form version of how they're going to show up, like at all.
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
The way we've read lots of resumes and interviewed people and gone, nope, they don't have the attitude. You can't put attitude on paper.
That's so true.
So while resumes are important, they don't demonstrate your ability. They do not show me how detail oriented you're going to be.
Right.
And often somebody with experience, and I've seen this in a mixture of both our employees and others, the level of life experience you bring also means that you are conscious of things that sometimes a younger audience just has not had to experience yet.
Right.
They're perfectly capable after they've experienced it, but they just haven't gone through it.
Right.
How many 25-year-olds deal with an RFP? Not many, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just getting through to an interview sometimes shouldn't be such a big deal, and it is. It's really hard to get that call back. Mm-hmm. It is unfortunate that who you know does make that difference. And I've seen so many open to works on LinkedIn where it's like, recommend me to others. And it's like, it's not the same as who you know. It's about asking who has the right role in the right space. And then it's about the company you want to work for. So there's so many pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really good point because, I remember when, way back when we first started out and we were looking for a job, we never necessarily thought about the corporate culture. We looked at the logo and the long-term viability of learning skills within that organization. But I think that's now changed, right? I think we're finding, as you pointed out, the attitude of the person that you are going to hire needs to match the attitude and the culture of the company that they're interested in working for. Because if there's not a marriage there of those core values, then it's going to break down. The relationship will break down on either part. And then you'll find yourself back out on the circuit again, looking for that, individual who provides the right role. So it's really interesting to see the dynamics that have changed over the years. And I certainly think that in the role that you have, you're clearly building a corporate culture that's transferable and that is of interest to people, I'm sure, of all ages, because as you say, sometimes we're looking, I've called it the brain dump. I want to be like an electric car. I want to plug myself in and get rid of all the information that doesn't serve me well anymore to make room for the things that I can now use or that I need to learn. And sometimes, mentorship and role modeling is not about ageism. It's about experience, and experience comes at any age.
It does. And it's really interesting, the group that I work with, even the variety of ages, there's very different experiences. Mm-hmm. Both some that at a young age have like a wealth in an area that I wouldn't have thought of.
Right.
And I've seen in others of a much bigger age, just a very big gap where you're surprised, right? But again, it comes down to what they experienced.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you very much for spending some time with me today, Heather, because not only did we get some information about you and your business, but we also got to tap into what you're experiencing as an entrepreneur in the market niche and the clients that you service. So Thank you. And to sort of wrap up our conversation, we always ask folks to share 3 words of advice. And your 3 words were intentional, honest, and flexible. So let's wrap up our conversation by you giving us a brief synopsis as to why those 3 words are important.
Absolutely. I will start with flexible. I've already explained why it matters to our culture, but I can't express the number of times we've had to be flexible to meet client needs and adjustments to project. And timing, because the truth of most of our work has always been like when the time is right, it will really be easy. And when it's hard, it's just out of sync. So be flexible, be patient. We've also learned that if you're not honest with a client really early about whether an idea is going to work, it's just going to work out poorly in the end. So it's better to be very honest and with each other within the team. It's how we maintain the culture that we have. We really like to stick to intentional, because sometimes people forget the reason behind something. It's a great idea. I really want to do that. Okay. Can we just be intentional about this? Where is this leading you? And is that really where you want to go? Really want to, and then people are more focused with their energy.
Oh, that's really great advice. I love how you wrapped it. It really ties everything that we spoke about today into 3 really great succinct buckets. So thank you very much for joining me. And I know, and I'm sure we will continue to stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Trish.
To you, our viewing and listening audience, I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this edition of Keeping It Real, introducing you to the person behind the logo. If you'd like to connect with our guest, you'll find Heather's contact information in the description portion below. I'm Trish Tonai, author, artist, and the founder and host for the series. And we invite you to share your business story. Just visit our website at shareyourstories.online and subscribe to our channel, Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting you next time when we share another great idea.